Hey class, how are you guys doing today? Okay, now all the fans of Duran Duran, will you please raise your hands? Okay, now this is an interesting sample because I'll tell you right now, 92% of these children are liars and the other 8% are wrong. That's right, the subject on the board today, there it is, artistic credibility, and a genuine attempt to reclaim the artistic credibility of one of the most discarded bands of all time. Now this is a real shocker because Duran Duran was the biggest band of the 80s. I think that I can say that. By nearly every single available metric, they were at the absolute top. Many even claiming that they led the path of the second British invasion, much the same way that the Beatles led the first. Now, while I'm particularly focusing on the self-titled Wedding album for this video, it's important to know some context about the situation to know how dire the situation was for the band. So everyone pretty much knows that Duran Duran essentially conquered the 80s with their new wave, new romantic sort of pop sound. And is that an oversimplification? Sure, but I mean, if their debut is post-punk pop, then Rio is funky pop, and Seven and the Ragged Tiger is pop on cocaine, and then you have Notorious Sophistopop? Okay. Anyways, it's here where we pretty much diverge. All these earlier albums did very well for the band, but their next releases showed them very quickly losing their commercial spotlight. Big Thing did okay and went gold here in the US, but even after the release of their first greatest hits package, their follow-up, Liberty, failed in nearly all aspects. Even to this day, I'm pretty sure that Liberty is pretty much universally considered an extreme low point for the band, though it does have Sirius and My Antarctica, which are two highlights that I would even argue just over the entire discography. The band did not like the situation they were in, and Capitol and EMI really didn't like the situation they were in, and as such, there were some much greater restrictions placed on the recording sessions for their as-yet upcoming album. To be brief, these limitations pretty much just included budgeting, and the label enforced a much tighter control over the songs for the album, pretty much requiring the band to showcase and demo the songs for the label themselves before they would allow the band to release them on the album, in effect, giving the band less creative liberty. And so what do we get from this? We get not only a massive commercial resurgence for the band, but quite possibly the most experimental and musically rich record the band ever produced. If you really wanted to simplify the ethos of this album, you pretty much have two sections of ideas going on in the band. And the first one being that they want to retain their previously acquired fan base. They don't want to reinvent themselves here. So in other words, this is not a Swordfish Trombones or a Climate of Hunter. Rather, it's just a progression of the band's predefined sound. One of the fundamental defining characteristics of this sound, as I'm sure that we all know, is the groove. Okay, now you could call it a dance beat if you want. You could do that, but I think that can be fairly reductive, and what Duran Duran really does is just put an emphasis on groove and rhythm, and by all means, that is absolutely retained here. I mean, listen to the sass in the opening to UMF. Or the hypnotic house beat in Drowning Man. And the slickness in None of the Above. And everybody knows Come Undone. It was a massive hit for the band, and still remains a fairly common radio staple, at least here in the US. But it would be unjust not to mention a song, especially since, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to get as much love here on YouTube as the other smash hit from this record. Now, one of my earlier videos on this channel was about T-Rex, and in that video I claimed that The Slider is one of the coolest, just sounding songs that I'd ever heard. And while Come Undone is possibly on the complete opposite end of the spectrum for that, I am telling you, this song is just dripping with cool too. The guitar riff sounds submerged, building a very dark atmosphere, and then the groove comes in, and it just oozes with sadness and loss and the feeling of coming undone, while constantly propelling itself, as if the sort of falling feeling is all-encompassing. Come Undone was a massive hit for the band, as I mentioned, peaking at number 7 on the US Billboard Hot 100, which, barring another single release from this album, was the highest position that they had received since Notorious, a full 7 years earlier. So there you go. It is clear that on this record, Duran Duran made a purposeful attempt not to reinvent themselves, but to fundamentally integrate the change of sound from the new music scene into their already defined style of music. But now let's look at that new changing scene of music to see how Duran Duran really created an artistic statement with this album while retaining their sound. Do you want to know what the singular most experimental and creative thing that the band did on this album? Okay, you might not believe me, but here it is. Okay, you ready? Acoustic guitar. Right off the bat, the first thing you hear on this record is acoustic guitar, and as you can hear, this isn't some like folky acoustic leaning of the indie scene being developed. No, this is a full-on grungy, rough acoustic guitar with some real edge and bite that we haven't seen from the band before. And then you get the lyrics to the opening track, which might not be the most poetic thing that you've ever heard, but they use a very interesting rhyming pattern, and the rhythmic delivery is so cool and biting. Destroyed by MTV, I hate to bite the hand that feeds me so much information. Duran Duran, possibly MTV's poster child for the 80s, is getting thrown aside for the new changing musical landscape, and this is their response, and it's pretty cool. Okay, this man right here, Zappa alumni, former bodybuilder, and at this point in the band's career, their full-fledged primary guitarist, Warren Cucurullo, pretty much took creative control over the vast majority of this album, and that is very apparent concerning the amount of guitar textures and intricacies that just hadn't been seen before as a primary focal point for the band. But speaking of Zappa alumni, let's take a sharp left turn into, that's right, bingo, you guessed it, Latin pop, okay? Because here we have not just Warren Cucurullo, but we get Vinnie Colaiuto on drums on Breath After Breath. One of the strangest songs on the record because, as I mentioned, just Latin pop, just smack dab in the middle of this album, with even some Portuguese passages from one of the most critically acclaimed MVP artists, Milton Nascimento. I'm telling you, this is a whack album, but I digress. So as I mentioned, a significant amount of the songs on this album were developed starting with Warren, and that's so abundantly clear considering the rich guitar textures used throughout this record. I mean, I already mentioned Too Much Information and the killer riff on Come Undone, but obviously you have the entirety of Ordinary World, which was pretty much birthed out of the acoustic riffing of Warren and defined by the sentiment from Simon's lyrics. To be honest, I don't really want to talk about Ordinary World because it's sort of in musical canon at this point. Everyone knows the song, and the song has been analyzed in great detail by many others before me, so I'll say this. I think the song is great, and if you want to know why I think the song is great, I linked a couple videos in the description that do a far better job of explaining it than I could. Let's talk about one of the least cool things in music ever. Covers.
Living for today.
That's right, everyone can cover songs. Few covers are ever worth listening to, and we all know how lackluster and meaningless many covers feel, especially in comparison to the originals. But hold on, you hear me say. Aren't we talking about artistic credibility? And yes, we are. But on the subject of artistic credibility, let's switch it over to my boy Lou to hear what he has to say.
I think Duran Duran's version of Perfect Day is possibly the best re-recording of a song of mine. I'm not sure that I sing as well as Simon sang it. I think he sings it better than I. If I could have sung it the way he did, I would have. It wasn't for lack of trying. They recorded it the way I meant it, which is a real big thrill for me, so thank you, Duran Duran.
Lou said that? That's unbelievable. That man hates everything. And I know that he was referring to a song on a different album, but I think that just the fact that he's willing to voice admiration for the band at all says quite a lot about the artistic credibility that the band has, at least in Lou Reed's eyes. On this record, Duran Duran covers Femme Fatale, another one of Lou Reed's compositions. And I will dare say, this is one of the best covers that I've ever heard. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I'm usually put off by covers of songs because all too often it sort of feels like it's more of a performance than a real statement. It's as if the cover artists are merely reenacting the song, I guess, rather than truly presenting it in a way that is really meaningful. But here I think Duran Duran nails it. Not only does the instrumentation and production of the track set up a perfect atmosphere for the song, one that is very distinct from the original Velvet Underground song, admittedly, but one that still maintains a very similar feel, but this song features possibly the greatest vocal performances from Simon's whole career. Okay, just listen to this isolated vocal section from the end of the track, and this is awesome.
The thing she doesn't please, she's just a little taste, and everybody knows she's a perfect child. She's a perfect child. She's a perfect child. She's a perfect child.
It really feels like this is a song that Simon could have written, just the way that he delivers his vocal with so much conviction. It really does justice to the original. So there you go. Duran Duran managed to not only reclaim their commercial spotlight with 2 massive hits from this record, but also managed to navigate the ever-changing landscape of the music in the 90s, primarily through the help of Warren Cucurullo, I would admit, but also through the sheer eclecticism of the songs on this album. I mean, you get flavors of industrial, you get trip-hop, you get down-tempo, you get Latin pop and house, all while remaining a fairly generally appealing pop album. But wait a minute, stop right there. You thought I wasn't going to mention my current obsession with this band right now. You thought I forgot, but once again I caught you. Love VOODOO. Oh my God. This is a perfect song. I could have made a whole video about this song. I think that it is that good, but I decided to just stick it on the end of this video. I have no clue how this song is not remembered as one of Duran Duran's highlights. I don't know how this song is not played on the radio today, except for the fact that there were 6 singles released for this album across various parts of the world, and somehow this was not one of them? That makes no sense at all. You talk about atmosphere. You talk about lyrics and production. I kid you not, one of the hookiest choruses from Duran Duran's whole career. I'll die on a hill to say that Love VOODOO is one of the best songs that they ever wrote. First, you're hit with a massive drum and bass groove, before layering in these ominous vocals and layers of acoustic, sparse guitar passages. And then Simon comes in with the vocal. Night after night, I try to prove that I can resist you, tied up inside your love voodoo. The queen of sensuality, you shelter me from liberty? We know exactly where the character is in this situation in terms of helplessness, but then there's some cleverness too with the lyrics. In verse 2, the character attempts to flip the situation around. Now this may come as no surprise, but I'm content to compromise until the day you realize that I have been manipulating you. That's not true at all. We get the hypnotic repeating of the chorus for the rest of the song. Yeah, we know that the character is not in control of the situation whatsoever, no matter how much they want to say that they're in control of it. The production effects during the delivery of it, it's just so cool. Is it a pop song? Yeah, it's a pop song, but I think it's a pretty perfect pop song. I think that it should equally be held on the same esteem as something of like Ordinary World and Come Undone, at least from a musical standpoint. I could understand, for example, having a greater appreciation for Ordinary World because of the sentiment, but still, just as a song, compared to Come Undone, you're going to tell me this is that inferior to Come Undone? I don't think so. I honestly believe that the Duran Duran Wedding album is a remarkable artistic achievement from the band. It's a very eclectic record. In that way, I guess you could say that it probably has something for everyone, but it also just retains the fundamental Duran Duran sound necessary for them to retain their spot as one of the biggest bands in the world. I think Love VOODOO is a song that every single one of you uninitiated should go out and listen to. But also, if you want to hear a super house-influenced dance track, go to Drowning Man. You want to hear some Portuguese Latin pop, go to Breath After Breath. You want to hear the band protest unsafe clubs, go with Sin of the City. I didn't even mention Sin of the City. The way that they teased the chorus the first time around, it's just sublime. Not quite as good as New Religion, but few things are quite as good as New Religion. Anyways, thank you guys for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And any future suggestions for moments in time, bands, albums, things that you think are forgotten that maybe I could do a video on to tell you why they shouldn't be forgotten, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do it. Subscribe to the channel, but there it is. That actually isn't where it is, but you know, stay tuned for the next episode. This is remarkable. This is the quickest time that I've uploaded 2 in a row, so maybe that means more to come. Thank you guys. Night after night, I try to prove that I can resist you, tied up inside your love voodoo, designed to manipulate. Night after night, I try to prove that I can